I want to move on to the other big basketball story from the weekend. Russell Westbrook's extension. As we all know, he signed on Friday, which just happened to be Kevin Durant's birthday, guys. On Sunday, Westbrook spoke about the timing of the announcement.
You know, we have a great relationship, myself and Sam, and, you know, we talk about many different things. You know, we have a good relationship where we don't have to, you know, make sure that everybody knows exactly the time, the date, you know, when I told him. But all that matters is that we were on the same page about everything, and me taking the summer to enjoy the things that, you know, I've discussed already.
I think that's a non-denial denial. Anyway, first, we have to say this event that he was speaking at was called Russ Fest, which is our friend Fred Katz from the Norman Transcript pointed out. Huge miss from the Thunder marketing department not to call it Russellmania. Still very upset about that, but anyway.
Next year and the next 5 years.
Next year, boom. We've all had fun with the KD birthday thing. Russ took the high road there. But I do, Brian, want to know what you think of the timing overall, because he did let it sit all summer. But he did make it before the October 16th date, and how this sets Oklahoma City up before the future.
Well, he has plausible deniability here. Yes. Having said that, the Thunder knew for days. I don't think they knew for weeks, but they knew for a period of time before he signed it that he was going to sign it. It did not come as a surprise. He did not walk into Sam Presti's office Friday morning and said, all right, I'm ready to accept my $200 million. They knew, and for whatever reason, whether it was Russell's decision, whether they wanted to do it against Russ Fest or whatever they called it, they can say that. There's no doubt in my mind that Friday was selected for a reason. And that's all I'm going to say. I can't prove anything else, but it wasn't an accident.
Maybe I'm naive. This just sounds like some tinfoil hat business.
You are naive, Kev. I'm sorry.
I bring my naivete. A nice Washington Post call out the non-denial denial. I mean, look, it's good news.
Washington Post in the house today.
Indeed. It's great that they're doing this and getting it off the board before the season starts. I mean, to me,
well, they have to. That's the deadline.
Right, because you have the October 16th deadline. But the other thing that's just interesting to me is he's not testing free agency. I mean, Russell Westbrook, who loves spectacle, who is as theatric with his persona as any player in the league, has just quietly, well, maybe not so quietly, just signed on the dotted line. There will be no Russell Westbrook.
Yes, but did he do it on Kevin Durant's birthday? Rachel, I think the thing here is the Thunder were nervous about this.
Yes.
And we know they were nervous about it because they made a couple of massive trades.
Yes.
And at some point, you know, he can say, I was always going to sign it, but he didn't sign it until after they made the Melo trade and after they made the Paul George trade. And that, to me, more than any pettiness with the Durant connection, is what I think is important here.
Well, it is interesting because it sets up dominoes for the franchise in Oklahoma City, and it sets up dominoes around the rest of the league. Of course, Paul George specifically. Paul George talked about this yesterday, also at Russ Fest, Thunder Fest. WrestleMania. Call it WrestleMania. This is what Paul George had to say about Russ signing.
It says a lot, not only in us pairing together, but you know, just knowing what type of dude Russ is and his values and his beliefs, and you know, him being committed in this organization says a lot. And I'm one person that's enjoying it here, so you know, I think when that time comes, the decision to be easier to make for myself.
I thought that was so interesting because he said the decision will make it easier, which makes sense on the surface when you look at it, because you know what Russ is doing. That way you can make your own choice. Does it make it a little harder, for him?
That's the way I looked at it.
Because then all of a sudden the pressure's now on PG, right? Before it was like, hey, if they both left, they both left. But now Russ has said, all right, I'm in. Paul George, kind of the spotlight shifts to him.
I don't think there's any doubt it makes it harder. And he has said all the right things. He had an interview recently with USA Today where he talked about how much he loved fishing in the Oklahoma City area. He's like, I'm exploring all these rivers and lakes and ponds. But, you know, in Indiana...
You should stick to the lakes and rivers and lakes that you're used to, Brian. Continue.
Bravo. But I hit in the 90s there. He said this in Indiana, too. I found, in general,
Which also has excellent fish and wildlife.
Which
recreational
he enjoyed fishing.
programs.
That's true. He is a guy who
turned into a commercial for the National Forest Service. You're welcome.
Generally, I think Paul, in my dealings with him, has been very truthful. But he always hedged in Indiana. And I expect him to do the same thing here. And if I was representing him, I'd tell him to do the same thing. He's going to hedge.
It's his right to be a free agent.
Absolutely, absolutely. But this signing isn't going to make a real difference. We're not going to know today whether he's going to stay. We're still going to have to wait to see how the season plays out.
I mean, he doesn't have to worry about the musical chairs, which is, well, if Russ stays, then maybe I'm staying. I mean, there is an element, a variable of certainty has now been introduced to this decision. So now he can line up the ledger. Here are the things OKC has going for it. I can play with a top 5 player. That is a certainty now. I can get more money here. It is a well-run organization. You know, there's a professionalism about it. But you're right. It makes it harder in the sense that now how do you walk away from that? Except that you do want, there is always a grass is greener.
You know what
dynamic.
it does? It raises the bar that the Lakers would have to clear to play him away.
Exactly. Walking away, if Russ was also walking away, Paul George's decision would probably be pretty easy. Now it is going to be a little bit harder, and we'll have to see. He does deserve, I think, that year to play with Russ and see how it is, because look, Russ is a particular kind of player, right? Some people, he's their favorite player. Some people, we saw Kevin Durant made a choice after playing with Russ for a number of years to say, I don't want to play with this kind of player anymore. So we'll have to see what Paul George thinks.